In the Victorian era, although the painted white faces and bright red lips had been popular before she came to power, Queen Victoria called makeup vulgar, which led many people in England to try for a more natural makeup look. The 1800s were filled with inventions to enhance women's natural features, but many of these ideas slowly killed them with toxic chemicals. Welcome to another unique episode of History Bazaar. Today we take a look at what toxic beauty tricks were used in the Victorian era. Having an extremely pale, fair complexion was important to women in the 1800s. Upper-class women wanted to show that they were wealthy enough to not have to work in the hot sun. They wanted their skin to be so pale that it was translucent, as in you could see the veins in their faces. Victorians had an obsession with death and actually thought that it was attractive for women to look sickly or dead. The Victorian-era women coat their faces in trace amounts of opium from lettuce leaves overnight and wash their faces with ammonia in the morning to ensure that they would always look as fresh and pale as possible. Arsenic wafers were supposed to remove freckles, making women look younger and more attractive. They were fully aware that arsenic was poisonous and addictive, but chose to do it anyway for the sake of achieving their ideal of beauty. In the 1800s, curly hair was popular. Early curling irons were tongs that needed to be heated in a fire. If a woman pulled the curling iron out of the fire and applied it to her hair too quickly, it would be so hot that her hair would literally burn off. As a result, baldness became a common problem for women in the Victorian era. Even if they became skilled at curling their hair, it was still a lot of strain on the scalp to constantly style it in tight curls. Women did not seem to put two and two together and tried multiple remedies of tea and medicines. It was even suggested that hair should be bathed with ammonia and water to stimulate growth. Exposure to ammonia can cause respiratory problems and burn the skin. It can also cause blindness. A mixture of equal parts of sulfate of quinine and aromatic tincture for baldness and loss of one's eyebrows in a fire. During the Victorian era, many people died of consumption, tuberculosis, and society had a creepy fascination with death. The clearest, most beautiful complexions were seen on people in the earliest stages of consumption. Women with consumption were constantly vomiting blood, and powers claimed that this was actually purging the impurities from their bodies, which made their skin clear and white. Women were advised to eat as little as possible. This allowed them to maintain just enough strength to function while also weakening their bodies. A meal plan that consisted of a handful of strawberries for breakfast, half an orange for lunch, and cherries for dinner, and, if you really must, it was okay to have some warm broth too. They believed that ammonia carbonate and powdered charcoal were a must in any woman's beauty regimen. These toxic chemicals were supposed to sit on women's faces. In addition, women were instructed to take a variety of medications every 3 months to purify their blood, although they were really making themselves sick to achieve the look of being close to death. Corsets were popular during the Victorian era to make women's waists as tiny as possible. To lose weight, some women would swallow a tapeworm pill on purpose. The slithery little creature would hatch inside the stomach and devour any food eaten by the woman. After she was done dieting, the woman would take pills to kill the tapeworm. But it was also believed that sitting in front of a bowl of milk with your mouth open would entice the worms to crawl out on their own. However, tapeworms are known to grow as long as 9 meters, so even if that method worked, people could choke in the process. Along with near-dead color of their faces, women with tuberculosis were known for having dilated pupils and watery eyes. When someone is in love, their pupils dilate as well. In the Victorian era, women with large pupils were considered extremely beautiful. To achieve this look, they would use eye drops containing nightshade from the belladonna plant. The belladonna plant is one of the most poisonous plants in existence. Consuming a couple of berries or a leaf can be fatal. In smaller doses, the poison may cause irritable bowel, swelling, and even blindness. Even Queen Victoria used belladonna drops in her eyes in an attempt to get rid of her cataracts. Although the drops did not cure her condition, her eyesight still improved because her pupils dilated. So, she continued to use the eye drops and refused to have surgery. Fine Victorian women did not wear eyeshadows. Since women wanted to look as natural as possible and did not want to be pegged as fallen women, they mainly focused on their complexions. They used little eye makeup and focused more on sculpting and filling in their eyebrows. However, they could not get away with homemade creams above their eyes, just to make them stand out. Some women would make light brown eyeshadows out of cold cream and crushed cochineal beetles. It was rare for anyone to wear eyeshadow purchased from a store, which was called eye paint in the Victorian period. However, when a prostitute or a Darien Victorian lady decided to try eye paint on a special occasion, she was slathering on cosmetics made from deadly chemicals. These included red and white lead to color the paint, as well as the mercuric sulfide. These chemicals poison the body, and mercury is even known to cause insanity. Lola Montez, a famous actress during the Victorian era, gave much more practical beauty advice. Montez wrote her own book called The Arts of Beauty. According to her book, as she was traveling in Bohemia, she learned that it was common for women to take baths in and drink out of arsenic springs. She admitted that it was extremely dangerous, but at the same time, she admired how wonderful their skin looked as a result. She also explained that if women did not continue with this habit on a regular basis, they would die. Arsenic is commonly used as a poison to kill rats, and it was easily attainable at pharmacies during the Victorian era. Women were not the only ones to see arsenic as potentially appealing. For years, it was seen as a primitive version of Viagra that increased male sexual potency. In small doses, it caused a euphoria, which made people addicted in both a chemical and psychological sense. You might think that with a beloved female ruler, women of the time would be free to discuss their beauty practices and openly wear makeup. Not so much. Queen Victoria and Victorian society as a whole deemed makeup the scandalous paint of actresses. A good and moral woman should avoid makeup altogether and just look naturally beautiful according to society's very strict guidelines. Victorian women found themselves stuck between a rock and a hard place. They were expected to be beautiful by looking a very specific way, but were judged or critiqued for wearing makeup to help them look that way. Many Victorian women still used makeup, but they kept their habits hidden as a shameful secret. This led some to avoid purchasing products, opting for bizarre and even lethal home concoctions instead. Others would hide makeup in prescription bottles or secret compartments within their medicine chests. In the final step of their top-secret makeup mission, many Victorian women applied it subtly, hoping to appear as if they weren't wearing any at all. Are you wondering what lengths Victorian men had to go to be considered attractive? Shorter hair was in style for men throughout most of the era, and facial hair was seen as a sign of masculinity. Yep, that's pretty much it. Beauty may be a pain, but we think poisoning yourself might be crossing the line. Hopefully you enjoyed another of our shows on History Bazaar. Watch this video right here, and don't forget to subscribe.